Back to the Apocalypse. Author, Yeo. Chapter 6-10. Chapter 6. After returning to his room, Bai Jing locked the door. Looking around to the left corner, there sat a 3-foot-tall safe. Keying in the well-memorized password, with a pui, the door opened. Bai Jing's pupils suddenly contracted, like a cat's eyes. They become a long narrow line. His first reaction was that this could not be. The safe was empty. Besides a machete, there was nothing else. Where were Mother's relics? Bai Jing's face became livid, only feeling his blood boil up. He was furious, an indescribable anger churning in his chest. No, not quite. Just then, he calmed down. Besides himself, no one knew what that password was. The things inside could not have been taken away by others, and he remembers very clearly, in the last life when the outbreak occurred, the things in the safe were still intact. This machete. Bai Jing slowly stretched out his hand and gently wiped the machete on his hand. The perfect handle and scabbard gave off a simple and old atmosphere. Cold and sacred, he pulled the blade out from the scabbard. The blade flashed, showing its restrained magnificence. The blade's curvature turned upwards elegantly, followed by a thinner aft end, and if he remembered right, this machete was mistakenly lost in his confrontation with the zombie. That is, out of his mother's relics, it was the only thing that didn't disappear after the mutation of the hidden dimension. Inside his heart there definitely was disappointment, loss, bitterness, regret, but all are not worth Bai Jing's shock to the heart. Never had he been like this. It was clear that he was born again, that this was not a dream nor a parallel world, but a real jump back in time because it was the same dimension, so what was lost will not come back. Crystal tears ran down his face. Bai Jing cried and laughed, though he thought he would not cry. He was glad everything has not happened, that there was still time to change. Just thinking of his mother's relics, Bai Jing's heart was saddened. Sadly hanging his head, he tightly held the knife in his arms, for this was the only thing he earned. Mother was the university school flower, but unfortunately her lifelong mistake was meeting his father. All she had left were relics, his grandfather's entire collection of antiques from throughout his life, but it was all gone now. Bai Jing bowed with a bitter smile, suddenly feeling a bit hypocritical. In fact, those things were already gone from his previous life, right? Wrapped up in a good mood, Bai Jing sent the machete into the dimension. At least he has it as a souvenir. When it was night, he thought he would toss and turn all night long, but he did not expect he would have a good night's sleep. How long had it been since he had such peaceful sleep, such deep sleep? After the outbreak, around 5 years before his death, he never seemed to have had such a stable sleep, either, so he really wanted to cuddle in bed. But, thinking of those spying eyes downstairs, within his smile was hidden concern about the blade. He did not want to stay in this house for another moment. He quickly finished grooming, went downstairs, where Wang Zubing and Cao Lai had been waiting to follow him. Nanny Chen kept talking, with a few words of blame from time to time. Wang Zubing kept his head nodding. Cao Lai slovenly crossed his legs, loosing a nasty laugh. His pair of dark eyes randomly looked around, not knowing how much of Nanny Chen's words got into his ears. Seeing Bai Jing arrive, his eyes brightened. He stood up, chest quite straight as if to salute, "Young master." When Wang Zubing heard this voice, and his eyes begging for help swept over, Nanny Chen got angry at once. She was not very satisfied with these two bodyguards. They normally had not a positive attitude nor discipline. Not waiting for her to say anything, Cao Lai asked, "Where would young master like to go? Would you like me to book a ticket?" Wang Zubing kept down his head. Just remembering the trip they went on yesterday, he had forgotten this very important issue. Nanny Chen was dumbfounded. Bai Jing looked at her. Didn't she always claim to care about him? So many obvious things that he did not think clearly over in his past life. How foolish he was in his previous life, for he had only her as a family. Since his mother died when he was 7, she had been always by his side. Bai Jing faintly withdrew his gaze and turned to look at Wang Zubing, directly ignoring Cao Lai. "We'll travel with the car. Drive there." That car was bought to gain Zhu Ting's favor, but it was only used once. Now, it would be put to good use. Wang Zubing's mouth formed an O. Before, when young master traveled, if it wasn't for significant landscapes, then it was for sightseeing abroad. Each time he showed that big style, comfortable, carefree, excited. He had long admired this sort of job. He thought he could help Cao Lai win an enjoyable job. Traveling by car, Wang Zubing's heart was cool as stone, and now there were only 3 of them. Wherever the young master wanted to go, the hard part was on the 2 of them drivers. although he was very fond of cars, but traveling with this car needed being on the road for many days. No one could stand that, so who the hell had the mood to see the scenery? Wang Zubing just felt fooled. Cao Lai pursed his lips. Compared to how the young master announced travel by car, he was more concerned about the young master's attitude. Just when did the young master treat Wang Zubing differently? Nor did he offend him yet. Feeling something strange was on mind, this was quite puzzling. Nanny Chen tried to speak but ultimately did not say anything against those words, only telling, "I wish a young master a happy time. Eat breakfast and then go, pay attention to safety on the road, and don't forget to call back home. Right in September is school, so you cannot be late. Beginning college means becoming an adult. No need for you to take too much notice of Tingting, for I will help you lecture her. Our little Jing is a man she can rely on." Bai Jing did not know how to act. If this was spoken in his last life, he certainly would be shy, would feel awkward. He grew up without parents and would very much like to hear this faint concern, but falsity is false. Nanny Chen should know that with the car, the distance traveled would not be far, so she would be assured. From now on, do not care for that woman. She really thinks she's something important. Let's go, Bai Jing faintly finished. Directly having Cao Lai drive, he threw his luggage to Wang Zubing. With a little travel bag, in addition to daily necessities, there were only a few books inside. Nanny Chen saw him out the door. Once Wang Zubing was in the car, he was full of excitement. What a great car! The whole thing had been modified. The trunk was not large, being only 30 square meters, but it had everything. As luxurious as a small suite, the car had anti-vibration. When sitting inside, you won't feel any shaking, just like one on a train. Tut! Richer people get everything. Just being a chauffeur is no good at all. Now, where to? Cao Lai's lazy voice passed over. Bai Jing felt very puzzled. This guy was apparently carefree, so how could he be a bodyguard? He was even sent by his father specifically, that is, recommended by a professional. Not understanding it, he thought no more of it. Anyway, it had nothing to do with him. Opening the map to see the route. Meal first, you're ordering, and then we go to Qingqin County. How about Xianxi restaurant? Cao Lai thought about the young master's preferences, refusing to say anything about his choices. Knowing Bai Jing was not fond of him, all he needed to do was obediently drive on the road. Do as you like, Bai Jing finished. Lazily leaning against the sofa, he took out a fantasy novel and began to read. Wang Zubing stared and was quite choked. Qingqin County is the first town not far from D City. What were they doing there? But no matter what he thought, no one would answer. Bai Jing's mind had long since been in the book, and to tell the truth, this man made utter chaos of the story. He looked really bored, but for that magical imagination, he had only admiration. Although he could now use the hidden dimension, humans still could not. Enter. Fortunately, psychic power can be manipulated in it, or else such large tracts of land could only be seen and never used. That would be awful. And he also wanted to look for inspiration from the novel. Maybe in some cases he would be able to have some breakthrough by those characters. Anyways, since those two were here, he did not have the leisure to read the medical books. He could only read at night in the room. From the way here to Huangshan, where there was a big distance, and while collecting materials on the road, until he arrived at Huangshan, he thought he should be able to clearly remember the force points to the human body and be able to trace all the meridians. Arriving at Xianxi restaurant, Cao Lai took the lead to open the door, responsibly taking an after you sort of motion. Bai Jing was not unaccustomed to this. He slowly exited the car, with a graceful gait, appropriately tailored clothes, his posture tall and straight. Bright and white was his face, revealing its cold and proud angles, an arrogant look in his eyes that seemed to see no one. All without exception, he made no attempt to downplay his grandeur. Even Wang Zubing had to give him praise. A noble is a noble, and the lay people were afraid that they could not imitate this sort of excellence. Only just having arrived at the first floor lobby, Bai Jing had become the focus of attention. People who knew him greeted him with a smile. Master Jing. Bai Jing frowned, and directly scaled the stairs to his private room. He did not understand why in his previous life he liked to be in crowded cluster, and always showed off his extraordinary, I don't know what Loki's attitude, as if pride had dripped into his bones. Bai Jing gave a self-deprecating smile. In fact, it was his self-esteem, wasn't it? Though his dad was great, the truth was, he was nothing but an illegitimate child. Master Jing, long time no see, one with elegant looks. A man had on a pair of gold wire glasses, approached them. Bai Jing looked at him and nodded. That man did not care about Bai Jing's coldness. He gently laughed. Master Jing, the person you sent last time has already left. Before, he wanted contact information, but without Master Jing's permission, I could not give out any. Are you having a meal? Mind if I join you? Bai Jing was puzzled. What person? Cao Lai then reminded him. Last Saturday, Hong Lai Street. A man. Hong Lai Street? What man? Bai Jing thought for a moment, but he still did not remember. For them, it was perhaps a few days ago, but for him, it was 5 years ago, and last Sunday he only just woke up from bed. Things that long ago, who could remember that clearly? It seems that Master Jing has forgotten, but fortunately I did not make a decision. I thought that you knew each other. Yang gave a faint smile. He was not the slightest embarrassed by the lack of a reply, and he actually seemed to have found firm footing. Chapter 7. The man he mentioned, he should be the man whose whole body was soaked in blood. Young master said that he was lucky enough to stay alive. So injured, yet he did not die, Wang Zubing recalled, explaining to Bai Jing. Bai Jing was slightly surprised for a moment. He suddenly remembered that this seemed to have happened, but he was not been concerned about him. Of course, and even now he will not care for him. It was only the occasional compassion. That person could be considered lucky. If he remembered correctly, that person should be down next to his car, his whole body covered in blood, so much so that even his appearance was obscured. He was just afraid of trouble, and rescued him on impulse. Hyung knew Bai Jing remembered, and with a smile on his face, he boastingly nodded and jokingly said, "Really great luck. His body has 8 wounds, was drugged and was soaked in blood. He was given more than 30 stitches, woke up the next night, and was just obsessed with Master Jing, his savior." Bai Jing glanced at him and did not speak, and Hyung noticed. Feeling a bit sorry, it seemed that this was not a successful introduction. Trying a second invitation. Master Jing has not eaten yet? Shall we, together? Bai Jing at first wanted to refuse. He did not want to involve this person with even his bones brimming with wisdom, but then on second thoughts, Hyung was a doctor, and he also owned a private clinic. He had access to a wider variety of medical supplies. Since Hyung has demand for him, the trouble would be his father's, not his own. Thinking again, he also nodded in agreement. He would never add a connection he would not use. Hyung smiled and asked him to enter the room, and he was a little surprised. He saw Jing had a moody face today, and there seemed to be little hope. But Master Jing promising to dine with him was a pleasant surprise. "Master Jing, your order first." Hyung handed over the menu. Bai Jing randomly pointed to a few dishes, then passed the menu to Wang Zubing. Cao Lai raised his dense eyebrows, eyes flashing a thoughtful reflection. Wang Zubing was also blunt. Finishing his order and returning the menu, Yang smiled and declined, passing it straight to Cao Lai. Actually, he had just eaten, but it was rare to meet Master Jing, so he then intended to eat again. Only when the waiter took the menu and left did Bai Jing directly say, "Help me get a set of physical therapy equipment as well as the most sophisticated laboratory equipment. In addition, get some drugs, especially anti-inflammatory drugs, cold medicine and antiseptics. The more, the better. I may not be here for the next few months. First, go rent a warehouse and help me manage it. I'll get it all when I'm back. Give me an estimate of the funds required." Hyung froze for a moment, then laughed and did not ask him for any reasons. As long as Master Jing asked, no problem, leave it all to me. It's sad talking about money first. Bai Jing sent him a glance. Since it could save a sum, he would not refuse. "Do not tell my dad." Hyung's eyes shielded by his glasses flashed a light. "Master Jing, do not kid around with me. Insignificant people such as myself have nowhere to know so respectful a person as your father." Bai Jing showed a sardonic smile. There was a history of sharp and edgy feelings behind it, making people feel as if there was no escape. Hyung did not speak, and feeling slightly upset, he changed his mind. He thought Bai Jing was just a temperamental, arrogant young master, and he used to look like one. The truth was he had not exposed his claws yet, he said. He was the illegitimate child of a powerful family, so how could things be so simple? Wiping his face saying, "You really overestimated him. That man is reborn." Before, he was a total fool. Bai Jing did not say anything, did not ask what Hyung required. Anyway, that did not concern him. This was only mutual benefit and reciprocity, not to mention, even if Hyung said it to him, Bai Jing asked himself, from the ignorant and incompetent him of before, he certainly would not understand. Slowly picking up the phone, he did not give his old man a call for quite some time. Now was not a good time to draw the line. If father does not spoil him, does not love him, after the outbreak of the apocalypse, when he was looking for military escort, where he encountered Xiao Sa, he was afraid of missing any link, leading to things changing. The others he does not care about, but only Xiao Sa. Not until they meet. Bai Jing did not want to give birth to any misfortune, so he quickly pulled out the shortcut key number 1, and his finger gently pressed. Little Jing, where were you these days? Why didn't you answer the phone? The money was already sent to you. Have you received it yet? I go it, and I am now going out to travel. Right, I have a friend that would like to Secretary Liao. Do you approve? What kind of friend? Not bad between us. He is a doctor, so Secretary Liao is to help with whatever he can. If you cannot approve, that's fine, too. I just do not want to leave a debt. Oh. When did little Jing learn the ways of the world? The phone laughed. Dad. Bai Jing's face was full of black lines, and his heart turned cold. No one could that with such a warm dialogue between father and son that in the future, they would become like strangers, who was the most backstabbed knife, and that can hurt anything. That kind of wound and festering pain, if a piece of flesh was not removed, it would continue to hurt. Well, good. It's up you to say how you want things done. Give Liao's number to him, and I will take care of the introductions. I have a meeting, so I can't talk to you more. Where do you intend to travel? May have to pay attention to safety on the road. Well, you are busy. I will be careful. Goodbye. Bai Jing put down the phone and had people bring pen and paper. He wrote a number and handed it to He Yong. Thank you, Master Jing. He Yong's lips slightly curled, with not a trace of dissatisfaction because it was the secretary's number, and everyone knew that state council members were busy. Obtaining the help of a secretary was, in fact, obtaining his approval. Before long, Xianxi restaurant assembled all the dishes together, and this meal could be considered very satisfactory. He Yong was satisfied, and Bai Jing was also very satisfied. With just a phone call, not only did he save a large sum of money, but he also got his medical requests finished. He felt it was all a good harvest. After the meal, they bade a polite farewell to each other. Bai Jing said an agreement that in a year he would come to pick the materials. He Yong noted and promised, allowing Bai Jing to rest assured. They were still here even if nothing had happened, and Wang Zubing and Cao Lai were surprised. First of all, Wang Zubing felt like the young master had changed as an individual, previously buying books and now buying medicine. This young master did not worry. He had money when he wanted it, power when he needed it. Wang Zubing could not think of the purpose his young master had to buy these. If it was for a favor, then he did not remember who was the good friend young master had. Cao Lai's thinking was simple. Even if his heart was completely puzzles, as a diligent bodyguard, the employer's business should be kept one eye opened, and the other closed. He felt he was a diligent bodyguard. Because of traffic congestion, it was after 1 p.m. when they reached Qingqin County. Cao Lai was so depressed that he wanted to curse. He would rather speed on the highway day and night, not line up in traffic jams. Slowly driving the crowded national highway, he found that he really was also an impatient man. The road was blocked, and looking at the long line of cars, he felt his entire being become irritated. To the hotel, Bai Jing put away the book, eyes looking out the car window, thinking about how to throw off these two off his tail. It was better to act solo. Wang Zubing and Cao Lai's hearts stopped. To the hotel. Young master said they would travel by car, but he did not mean to only here, right? Qingqin County, with a distance from B City that took less than 30 minutes on the highway by car. But no matter what they thought, the young master was a boss, so Cao Lai obediently drove to the largest hotel in Qingqin County. Bai Jing did not put much care for their depressed eyes. He had Cao Lai pay for 3 rooms, and then said he wanted to go out and that they were to not follow, but as personal bodyguards, they could not acquiesce, insisting on keeping together with the young master. Bai Jing casually nodded and spoke no more. But the next moment left the two filled with regret. No wonder people say that men do not like to accompany women to go shopping. In fact, to accompany the young master going shopping is the same. Bai Jing first went to the machine trading market, and then looked around. He used the extra manpower. Bai Jing had the 2 men ask prices, handed them 1 small notebook, calling it a market survey record, and then went to the farmer's batch market. Labor was part of a bodyguard's duties. He was looking for a cool place to have some ice cream, and now that it was the dog days of summer, The weather was hot, and the farmer's market stank. A young master would never lower his pride. Habits are changed with the environment, in conditional circumstances, and Bai Jing certainly had not wronged himself. Then they went on the trip to the daily supplies wholesale market. Anyway, they started from 2 in the afternoon and continued to wander to 7 in the evening. They had not bought anything, and seeing the shops to close, Bai Jing compassionately let them eat, without forgetting to say they would continue tomorrow. Wang Zubing and Cao Lai legs were sore, and they would do this again tomorrow. Wang Zubing was full of resentment. The young master used to buy things, but he never asked for the price. If he fancied it, he took it. In fact, he was very skeptical. The young master would not be deliberately toss them, right? After dinner, it was nearly 8 p.m. Bai Jing hand-waved, signaling that they were now free to relax. He went back to his room to study the medical books. He currently does not want to waste any time, but at 12 a.m., he went to sleep. The next day, Bai Jing continued to go shopping and asked them both to go. Cao Lai directly shook his head. Wang Zubing thought a bit and resigned himself to follow. As a bodyguard with due diligence, the protection of young master's safety is most important. This day, Bai Jing did nothing, only having Wang Zubing drive around the county and around the outskirts of the town in a circle. Wang Zubing finally understood why Cao Lai was impatient yesterday. With this congested traffic, it was indeed frustrating. On the third day, Wang Zubing also wanted to follow. Bai Jing felt gloomy, for this was the first time he was worried about this much loyalty. Cao Lai tugged Wang Zubing, huddled close and whispered, "The young master has grown up now. He needs free space. Do not follow." Wang Zubing suddenly realized and stared at Cao Lai. "Say so earlier. Yesterday, he was as tired as a dog." Cao Lai innocently blinked his eyes, laughing boisterously. Looking back at him, he indeed said so yesterday, but would he listen? Wang Zubing was silent. Indeed, although his heart was also very doubtful, but if Cao Lai told him yesterday, he certainly would not want to refuse. With his bodyguard's sense of responsibility, he could not let down the young master, no matter. Chapter 8. So, under Cao Lai's lobbying, Bai Jing can finally act alone. He had some stores in mind from touring around yesterday. Around this county there were a total of 7 gas stations, and he did not intentionally have Wang Zubing drive aimlessly everywhere. In his mind he thought as such, and in his actions he hesitated not. Bai Jing drove quickly to the gas station. With the approval to buy permission from his old man, and limits to buying oil were not a problem. He went to a gas station, bought 10 barrels of gasoline and diesel, storing them into the trunk, and then finding a remote place to send them into the hidden dimension, he then went to the next stop and so repeated the process again and again. Finishing those 7 gas stations, it was almost 11 a.m. Feeling slightly hungry, Bai Jing contemplated for a while, but he did not go to expensive hotels, and instead drove to the street food to sample the foods. If he had one where the taste was not bad, he would then have 20 packs. The hidden dimension could keep food fresh, and having these side dishes at the apocalypse, they would become extreme gourmet. Then he rented a large warehouse. Money gets you anywhere, and the time was not even close to 1 p.m. after these chores. Coming to the machinery trading market, Bai Jing was puzzled. While the idea was plump, the reality was skinny. How did the generator work? But after being tangled for a while, Bai Jing simply thought, the hell. Buy first, then figure it out later. He right now lacked in everything but money. He bought to each of the various models of water generators, and then he bought a few solar generators, then the seeder from the threshing machine, a bulldozer, oil extractor, harvesters, digging machines, and cotton machines. As long as he could think of it and it was on promotion, he bought it in sets of 2. Living through the barrenness of the apocalypse, his favorite thing right now was to prepare. Anyways, there was a lot of storage space, so no matter how much material he had, he would not worry. Directly reporting the warehouse address, he then went to the agricultural market. He bought trucks and trucks of vegetables and fruits, and Bai Jing also bought a lot of pork, chicken and beef, a variety of seasonings, almost emptying the store's inventory. Arriving at the daily necessities wholesale store, shampoo, detergent, towels, toothpaste, toothbrushes, pots and pans, toilet paper, and even underwear, he purchased more than 100 boxes all at once. There was still bedding, bed sheets, pillows, and the rest. Whatever he saw, he bought. Although he wanted to buy some chickens, ducks, and sheep at the countryside, thinking it over once more, he just gave up. Those materials had not been organized in the hidden dimension, and there was no fencing. He did not want those animals go running around destroying the environment. But thinking as far as here, he went to the seed market, not only just prepackaged varieties of grain, but he also bought grass seeds, herb seeds, vegetable seeds, and a variety of seasonings seeds. Bai Jing had to admit that he was a lazy person. If he kept chickens and ducks, he did not have time to feed them every day, but they ate grass anyways. He intended to isolate 2 acres of land, plant some grass and vegetables, or something so that those animals could have natural growth. Additionally, plants of the hidden dimension grew faster than on the outside, harvesting one while the other grew back before those were eaten. He thought 2 acres of land should be enough for those animals to eat and to live around. Bai Jing was actually very fortunate that his hidden dimension had an automatic purification function. Garbage or the like would disappear in less than a day without a trace, or else, if he raised these animals, he would feel really troubled, for they were too dirty and also stank. If he wanted to raise animals, then he would have to think about the enclosures, and then the fish and crabs also needed ponds dug. Bai Jing's brow wrinkled tightly, as he suddenly felt that he still had many things to do. Looking down at the time, at this moment, those materials should have arrived at the warehouse. Thinking that he still had enough time, he would not stay here anymore. Qingqin County was only the first stop. On the road to Huangshan, he also intended to stay a few days at every major town, but most importantly, as Bai Jing's eyes flashed a sliver of hope, he would like to go to An City, where Xiaosong was born. Whether they could meet or not, if only for reminiscence, he hated that he paid less attention to him before. Driving to the warehouse, the mechanical equipment had been sent over, and several delivery staff were waiting at the door. Fanning themselves with a hat while talking, from time to time they also anxiously looked around. Everyone was sweating profusely, their clothes dipped in perspiration with some clinging to their backs. Bai Jing got out of the car, smiled and apologized, opening the warehouse door so that they could carry in things directly. Then, not long after, vegetables, fruits, all kinds of meat, seasonings, and daily supplies and seeds were here, too. Waiting until after they left, Bai Jing then sent everything into the dimension. Looking inside, at such a small corner, Bai Jing laughed from his heart, for his goal was to entirely fill the rest of the place. Then, he went to that delectable food street again, eating and grabbing takeout at the same time. This place's dishes were inexpensive, like fried noodles, cold noodles, fried skewers, fried squid, dumplings, crab bun, barbecue, and every variety of cold and hot foods. He felt it was necessary to buy a little. Although he was now rich, it would be too much of a luxury to dog-bag the restaurant's dishes. To fill one's belly was already luxury enough, and a meal in a restaurant was enough to eat for 10 days in the apocalypse. Returning to the hotel, Bai Jing announced to Wang Zubing and Cao Lai that the next stop was Shijing County, which was about 100 kilometers from Qingqin County. It was also a large town, and he intended to stay there for 2 days. Shijing, Wang Zubing and Cao Lai looked at each other, not knowing what the young master was thinking. Bai Jing did not care about them and went right back to his room. He heard that Shijing had a good garment factory, and he wanted to go there to see and select some durable clothes to put the dimension. People do not pay attention to famous brands in the apocalypse. Their quality is not worth a zombie's embrace. He also heard that B City later developed protective clothing, not knowing its effectiveness, but it evidently was not too good. Otherwise, how would so many people die? But when he thought of clothes, Bai Jing also thought of sewing machines, so perhaps he should also purchase some as well. He decided against going to B City. Although he just wanted to find Xiao Sei's whereabouts, look at him, protect him. Xiao Sai still had many brothers. He certainly would not leave them for dead, and here also was Wang Zubing. As soon as Bai Jing thought about that, his head swam. Buying sewing machines naturally required purchasing needles and thread. Right, he almost forgot to buy instant food. Though he did not like to eat instant noodles, they also had to buy some in addition to a variety of canned goods, bread, biscuits and the like. Fortunately, here he birthed 1 year before apocalypse. Otherwise, he was really afraid of not having enough time to prepare. Furthermore, he should exercise his body, because during the apocalypse, he did not want to die by the zombies' kisses because he could not run fast enough. Additionally, he had to learn how to use the generator. The thought of digging with a hoe, digging a pond with a shovel, Bai Jing felt uncertain about the future. How long until he was finished with all this? Only half an acre of land in last life. He dug for 3 days before the seeds were planted, but now it was 8 acres. In addition to half an acre of spring water, it was also 5,000 square meters. Even if it was to be given to animals and grass, he still needed to turn the soil first. Speaking of the pond, he also intended to feed a number of aquatic contraptions. They were clean and did not take up much space. Bai Jing sighed. No matter how tangled he was now, it still needed to be done, if only to have a greater living space in the future. For the next half-month, they stopped and went. When they reached the larger town, Bai Jing would stay for 2 days. When arrived at some places with more local products, he would stay for 3 days. Wang Zubing and Cao Lai had now basically gotten used to this. The young master would get up every morning and go to the hotel's gym. An hour later, he would skip breakfast to drive out directly, and then he would come back before 8 p.m. This was very much their daily life. In the beginning, the two of them felt odd. Wang Zubing worried excessively, pushing Cao Lai to go track and observe. Who knows if not long after he went out if would be caught by Bai Jing, so these two were unfortunately disinclined to labor. Bai Jing still did nothing. Sightseeing in the county and surrounding towns, then asking prices, so that they were left standing in the sun running a few trips. Not buying anything, waiting until the time to drive back. The next day, Wang Zubing did not give up, only blaming Cao Lai's carelessness as the cause it would let the young master find their traces. This time, they must be careful not to leave a trace of a mistake. Cao Lai was unwilling, but at Wang Zubing's insistence, he had no way to refuse. Plus, he was also very curious. How could the young master find them? And thinking again, he agreed. He was still a bit confident in their abilities. While the results could be imagined, but today was also a fussy day. On this day, the young master tossed them about more ruthlessly, not only asking them to ask for the price, but also had them do hard labor. Whenever they went to a new place, the first thing was to buy large and small bags of things. The heavier, the better. After buying, he only let them run around carrying things. Finally returning to the car and putting things down to rest for a while. It was just that when they arrived at the next destination, the young master tricked them once more. Although this method was very clumsy, they also had to praise its effectiveness, for they were really tired enough to choke. Cao Lai refused to go the third day, and only Wang Zubing had high morale, believing there would be no evil. Cao Lai thought, go, just go. As long as he had enough spirit to wait for him to come back for comfort, then it was fine. This day, Wang Zubing confidently went out and dejectedly came back. He did not tail on the 4th day. He was not afraid of being caught by the young master, but he was afraid of the young man increasingly tossing him about. The 5th day, early in the morning, they went to the next town. In their eyes, this became a habit. As long as the young master suffered no accident, they were also happy to open one eye and close the other. They suddenly found that on such a day, in fact, they could very relaxed and comfortable. If they just pretend this was tourism, the young master going out for his own affairs, the two of them could have fun together without interference. Bai Jing, in fact, felt suspicious about their behavior, guessing at once Wang Zubing's idea, but he could not afford to be angry. He could only change the way of the toss so that they quit. If they really wanted to track him down, that would be a joke. Though it was not the function of his psychic power, finding two sneaky people would not be a problem. Chapter 9. In the middle of their stop-and-go trip, they arrived at the first large-scale intermediate-level city, H City. Close to famous tourist attractions, there were several very well-known food factories, and Bai Jing intended to stay here a few days. Those towns where they had stopped to buy food, vegetables, agricultural supplies, and daily necessities were perhaps convenient and cheap, but to buy fence, electrical and the like, he had to come to the big cities. Although he bought a lot of things on the road, the items only occupied an area less than 300 square meters in the dimension. To be honest, he was both happy and discouraged. Happy that the large dimension could contain so many things, but discouraged that with so much space, when would this ever be filled? Storage space and farming space was different. Storage space could be superimposed according to the volume of items. With 8 acres of storage space 20 meters high, Bai Jing felt he really needed to load to capacity the storage space. In fact, even if he did not farm, there was enough to eat for a lifetime. But this was just a thought, and more preparations were always welcome. And his heart held a faint hope that the apocalypse could quickly end, even if those things he bought in such enormous quantities that he probably would never get to use them. He still persisted to purchase them. However, would the apocalypse ever be over? Bai Jing's heart could not be sure. In the final periods of his previous life, although he was in the institute, from the attitude of the researchers, he could see how severe the developments were. They had to face against more and more powerful and countless zombies, monsters, mutated animals, plants. 1. Was there really room for human survival? Young master, we've arrived. Cao Lai then interrupted his thoughts, and Bai Jing gave a self-deprecating smile. And what he was thinking about was that in this life, he had been picked up, tried, struggled, and if died, then if he could die together with Xiao Sa, he thought he should be satisfied. Xiao Sa certainly will not live together with him in the hidden dimension, and when it came time to die, he would die. To Bai Jing, it did not matter. Just giving up without trying, then, was impossible. Even if there was only a glimmer of opportunity, he and Xiao together would work hard, trying hard to live. You go book our rooms first. I'm going to look around, Bai Jing thought to this point, not wanting to delay for a moment to get rid of these two, and went directly to the building materials market. The purchase of the fence must be as soon as possible. He encountered several fence sellers in the small towns they stopped at also, but he was not very satisfied. The style was neither good-looking nor strong, and if put to order, you would need more than a week. The shortest time to receive should be 5 days. Anyways, he intended to stay in H City for a few days more, and to the building materials market the sooner, the better. If not, pre-ordering would be fine. Wang Zubing and Cao Lai were not surprised, for H City was but a tourist destination. Cao Lai made plans at once of where he wanted to go have fun. With the young master's changes in behavior, Wang Zubing could not help but feel some worry. The changes were too fast, faster than people could respond, and until now, he could not understand how the young master found him during his tale. Since that day, July 31st, the young master was not the same. The indifference and cold hidden in his eyes, coldly on the sidelines and ignoring the whole world, he was definitely not pretending. Looking at such a young master gave him illusions of seeing someone elderly dying, one person without any major changes, yet Wang Zubing really could not think of any kind of reason that led the young master with such arrogance. Stubbornness, born unhappy with the taste of royalty, changed so quickly and drastically. Moreover, he also did not know if this was an illusion, but he always found young master treat him somewhat differently. Wang Zubing could not recall whatever would be the cause for this special concern. Did the young master know his good character, thought he looked handsome and so held interest in him? Wang Zubing patted his cheek and could not help but cast himself aside. Slightly flushed, he could not help but think of that day, the young master's appearance after the shower. What a fucking temptation. This was simply a crime. But the young master was straight, he was very clear on that. Kalei's face was black. Seeing his expression change to and fro, his face with a slightly coquettish look, CAO's eyes began to flash a curious light. Showing a touch of devilish color, it looked devilish, dangerous and had a heart-stirring charm. A voice filled with magnetism slowly arose. What do you want, huh? No, nothing. Wang Zubing trembled without tears. He really did not put much into thinking. Everyone had a beautiful here, and he was only appreciating it. Cao Lai raised his eyebrows. With a faint smile, he glanced at him, turned, and walked to the hotel reception, leaving only 2 words in his ear. Open room. Wang Zubing quickly followed, his expression unclear. What does he mean? Bai Jing first rented a warehouse and then came to the building materials market. Although the fence shop had not yet been located, he felt awestruck just by browsing. Looking at a variety of building materials, his heart could not help but to mock the difficulty of choosing. That would be nice if he could have a house in his space. He would make the layout warm and appropriate so that returning to the space would feel like returning home. Sir. Hello, may I ask what you need? A salesman with sharp senses saw Bai Jing dressed in that style. Even if he did not look old, he would not be neglected. Bai Jing shook his head, eyes filled with dismay. In the case of these materials, he was able to see they could not be used. Even after he met with Xiao Sa himself did not know how to build a house. The hidden dimension was to be confidential, so he could not find someone to help repair things. Even after the outbreak and the beginning of a new life, something less prominent was easy to cover up. Coming up with these good materials, a house was the most eye-catching of signs. Tall trees catch much wind, don't show all your cards. He understood these, and in his previous life, it did happen, did it not? The salesman saw his mind changing, but continued to lobby. Sir, what is the hesitation? We are the largest building materials market supplier in H City. We can give you some suggestions, And we also do remodeling and can also help you design the style you love. Feel free to take a look. I want a house, Bai Jing said dryly. The salesman went blank, puzzled. Was it possible he had not bought a house yet? But that did not seem to be the case. Smiling, he asked, "Can you say a little more? We will try to meet your requirements here." Bai Jing was free at the moment, and he was now at the building materials market, anyways. The fence was not pressing at this time, and he also kept a faint hope, explaining, "I want a simulated physical house. Do not build the foundation, but it needs to be strong and durable, suitable to live in. Water, electricity, and sewer pipes all need to be completed, but also comfortable inside with decorations, a living room, bedrooms, bathrooms, and kitchen. In short, it is a 2-story cottage," Bai Jing said. His request seemed a bit high. He turned things over in his mind and said, "If it is not possible, 2 rooms and 1 living room can suffice." The salesman looked shocked. This, what kind of person was this? His head did not break. Could it be he just had extra money he could not spend? But the customer is God, and what Bai Jing said excited him. These were a lot of materials, and his commission this year will be enough with this one. Where there is a will, there is a way. May I ask this gentleman to wait? I'm going to get the manager. Bai Jing was surprised for a moment and nodded, for he did not expect it really could be done. Before long, the manager came out. He was a man about 40, slightly fat, middle-aged with a pot belly where his body particularly protruded. His eyes shone with a twinkle, and gently smiling, he knew with the look that this one was difficult to catch. He quietly looked at Bai Jing and smiled. He said, "Is this the gentleman that needs to build a physical house?" The salesman nodded. He pondered for a moment, then hesitatingly said, "But this price will not be cheap." Bai Jing lifted his brow, glanced at him and said, "The price is of no concern, as long as the house was to his satisfaction, no matter how much more expensive it was, he still wanted it. A home. One that really belonged to himself, so how could he not long for it with his racing heart? After the outbreak of the apocalypse, to have such a home to rest, how happy that would be. As long as they could build it, he was willing enough to spend more money. Any more expensive, and it would be like a real villa. Let's have a talk inside the office, please." The man's eyes lit up, inviting Bai Jing to the office. Bai Jing nodded and followed after him. Entering the office, he freely sat on the sofa, with his lazy appearance, and revealed the nobility and elegance emanating from his bones. The manager's attitude and smile were both friendly, and he asked, "Where does this gentleman want to build his house? What kind of style, as well as remodeling? What are your requirements? Will lamps, kitchen utensils and others be or not be handled by you? You can talk to me about the requirements, and we will try to meet your requirements." Bai Jing frowned and pondered. He had forgotten that there was nowhere to build a house, and such large objects cannot disappear into thin air. "Sir, are there any difficulties? Can you tell me? We'll try to solve them." Left double quotation mark. Bai Jing thought, devising something to say, "I am new to H City, so I'm not familiar with this neighborhood. Do you know of any abandoned factory, or empty large warehouse? You can first build in the house, and I'll take it later." Left double quotation mark. After Bai Jing finished, the manager at first doubted some things. Bai said he only just arrived at H City, so how could he just think of building a house? The manager was not a fool. Spending so much money to get a house, but built in that place, how would he transport away? Also talking about taking it, could he be sending helicopters? As the manager's mind kept thinking, Bai Jing did not see him and made the house according to his ideas, which would take at least a few months to finish. He could rent the warehouse or abandoned factories for a year. Then when the outbreak came, who would mind how the house disappeared? Speaking with the man before him, he needed to use half-truths and half-lies. It's no big deal to say that he'll send an aircraft to take it. Anyways, since his style was extravagant. It must be said, these two men happened to have the same thinking. The manager thought for a moment, then said, "There is a large warehouse nearby, a former food factory. It was some yogurt factory, and now that moved to some other place. The old factory is empty now. Though it is too far to commute to, the venue is relatively large, so it became a warehouse. And now, it's just empty, but if you want to build a house, then this deposit." Left double quotation mark. "You shall have it," Bai Jing faintly said, his heart secretly jumping. A remote area, was this not just right? If it was built downtown, he was afraid of attracting trouble. Ha! How the manager said upon hearing this, and it did not matter how Bai Jing moved the house away as long as he was paid well. Now, let's talk about your request. Since he was so full of his service, Bai Jing immediately bluntly and directly put in his request: a small 2-story duplex building. The living room should be large. The house lighting needed to be good, with large windows reaching the floor, as well as large bathrooms, and what other materials for the doors and windows, the floor, as well as the decoration of the ceiling. The house lights, study room, bedroom, living room, with what kind of style. Only when Bai Jing became dry in the mouth was the house reluctantly finalized. After making some calls, the time that passed had been a few hours. Bai Jing very readily paid the 200W deposit without another word. Then, he remembered that the fence had not yet been bought, so he asked, "Where is fencing sold around here?" This was the first time the manager met such a straightforward guest, and after the deal was settled, only talking about his request and letting them play freely, such a guest was really rare. After listening to Bai Jing's question, the manager laughed. "Sir, buy a fence? There are some stores nearby. If you find it troublesome, we can help you order. What do you want for the material? The strong the better, preferably steel. This is an easy job. When do you want it? The sooner the better. Today would be best." This, the manager called a salesman, whispered a few words in his ear, and then spoke to Bai Jing with a smile. "Sir, you put in an urgent order. Would you like to see the goods now?" Bai Jing nodded, as that would be the best. The H city really was well worth its name as a national medium-sized city. Arriving at the fence area, Bai Jing immediately saw what he wanted. Manufactured from steel, there were approximately 1.4-meter high fences, and they had a lot of stock in their warehouse. It was originally a club which made special orders, but it had been more than 2 months, and no one came to take it. Since Bai is now anxious to have some, they served him first. Bai Jing very generously paid the money and had them deliver the fence to the warehouse. The outcome today was not bad. With the fence installed, he could raise some animals, and then he intended to arrange the dimension into a paradise. There was no rush to farm, as his food stores had enough to eat for some time. And if the ability was upgraded, then the land would become larger. This was only 8 acres of land right now, which was not enough. The next few days, at night, when Bai Jing did not read medical books, he only controlled his psychic power to cut out 2 acres of land, which were then divided into 6 sections via fencing. He already made a good plan that his space would not only have chickens, ducks, sheep and cows, he also wanted pigs. Sheep can live with goats. Sheep's wool was insulating. All animals in the apocalypse, if they did not mutate, they became zombies. To have good wool later was perhaps impossible. And the cows, he would also like to keep Shao well fed. Anyways, keeping them was not a trouble, and he felt being more prepared was better. During the day, he drove around everywhere, first to the major food factory to buy enough food. Then later, he went to the electrical city to buy washing machines, refrigerators, electric heaters, dishwashers, induction cookers and the like, and then thinking again, he went to a winery and tobacco factory. Although he did not like alcohol or tobacco, he remembered that stuff would become a rare luxury in the apocalypse, and it was still an essential gift choice. Because the place was relatively far, Bai Jing spent a total of 2 days, came back later and was questioned by Wang Zubing. Bai Jing naturally ignored it, making Wang Zubing jump angrily, but it seemed he was accustomed to his incessant jumping. Chapter 10. Time flew by, and after spending an entire week, Bai Jing finally installed the fence. Looking at a row of neatly organized space, his heart raised in unspeakable satisfaction. Then, he went to buy a diesel generator, a switchgear, for there was no other option. Who would have known a hydroelectric generator would be such trouble? He could only stare at it, unable to use it. In fact, he had no knowledge of diesel generators, but fortunately there were installers that taught him step by step. The most important thing was that he only needed to provide diesel while installers could help him with the install. All he needed to do was turn the switch on or off until the fuel ran out. Having obtained a generator, Bai Jing bought a bunch of wires. Entering the dimension and fiddling for a while, he took out the bulldozer, and in less than 2 hours, the 2 acres enclosed by the fence was completely wrecked. Moreover, he did not waste time, even for being a rookie. Looking at the results, Bai Jing could not help but praise that having a high-tech tool was good. Remembering the digging in his previous life, he really could not bear to recall that, but he was forced to dig that time. People's potential was truly limitless. And then Bai Jing planted some vegetables, bean sprouts, sweet potatoes and the like, so that after those sprout, he could keep livestock in the field. Although the timing was still early, he liked to watch the space become lively, little by little, to complete his plan until it became his dream paradise. After everything was done, Bai Jing recalled his psychic power and felt his brain was empty, but no dizziness and fatigue. His psychic power endured for longer than last time. Even a tiny bit of progress was good, and Bai Jing smiled in satisfaction. Psychic power did not excel overnight, and he only hoped that before the outbreak of the apocalypse he could advance his abilities a rank so that he could use skills, guarantee a bit more his life. But he could not keep his happiness any longer, for a phone call ruined his good mood. School time was coming, and having not heard from him, Nanny Chen anxiously complained to his father. Since the tour, he had only 2 phone calls with his father, and the talks were not long. His dad had always been very busy, and though each call was a nice chat, they just kept generally around 3 to 5 calls a month before. So, if not for his childhood lack of love, how would he rely on Nanny Chen so much? These days, he did not answer any calls from Nanny Chen, but Wang Zubing did. One could guess that the resentment Nanny Chen had toward Wang Zubing would have accumulated to at least 30 feet high, but Bai Jing's depression at being forsaken was easily understood. With his father on the phone, he felt desolate, indifferent. There was a murky feeling, only feeling that things were impermanent, as if his whole heart was cold. But he would not refuse his father's concern because he knew, at least at this moment, his dad really loved him. And with Nanny Chen on the phone, he felt disgusted and wanted not a single word with her. In the last life, he was silly enough to not see clearly. In this life, listening to her words, those phrases made him feel that there were ulterior motives, as if there were vague implications. Back then, he indeed was like that, acting in accordance with her intentions. Bai Jing hung up the phone, his lips pulling into a mocking curve. His father really loved him. When he said that he did not want to go to school, his father said to apply next year. He said that he did not want to go home, and his father asked him if he had enough money to spend. He said he wanted to go to B City to see father, and his was father silent for a moment, and said, "Oh, no, he was very busy for the time being, that he was going to have meeting at X province, that they might miss each other. So after all work was finished, would father go to see you, okay?" He was always busy. Bai Jing had a faint smile. For such a favor, to be honest, sometimes he really did not know what his father was thinking, did not understand the mind of a politician, and perhaps never understood. Spoiling him, loving him, answering his every request, almost like loving a pet. Bai Jing once had a pet named Snow, and he was a teacup dog. Back then, his mother just died, and he was to live with his father's family. He felt uneasy, afraid, fearful. As a 7-year-old child he already understood, and he knew that others were accusing him as being the fatherless one. The unfamiliar face of a strange father, he was both happy and afraid. Mother was gone, and if his father did not want him, then what should he do? His father gave him that teacup dog, and he liked it very much. Small and very cute, it cheered him up in a strange environment. And then he spoiled it, loved it, cared for it, and was very attentive to it, but when he made new friends, he once took Snow out to show off when it was a chilly winter. After they returned home, Snow fell ill, and then he never woke up. He was sad for a long time as well as very angry, even breaking up with his new friends. He never thought he was wrong, that he should not have taken Snow out to play. The teacup dog was difficult to support. He obviously knew that, didn't he? But he still did whatever he pleased. He thought, father may have thought he was something to raise, something he liked. Surely, he was to be spoiled, loved, protected, and did not need him to have too much interest, nor did he need him to be too competent. Anyway, father had everything he needed, so it could not cost a lot to feed him. If the outbreak did not happen, he would just be his father's son, or maybe he would really be a pet for his whole life. Bai Jing faintly pondered, his heart without a trace of emotion, as if thinking about a stranger. He did not blame his father. He really did not. He was an illegitimate child, yet his father gave him a good living environment, spoiled him, and loved him, so what was there to blame about? Should he blame his father for not treating him well? Blame his own greed, pickiness, excess extravagant hopes, so that when he was abandoned he was so angry, so sad, so shocked that he would not believe it? His mind no longer thought about it. Things from his previous life for him now were like across a gap. In fact, they really were separated by a lifetime. Then since those memories were so long ago, He would not care how his father does in this life. Anyway, he did not intend to go to B City. They would never see each other again, yet he was mulling over this so much. Furthermore, in this life, he would not bully. If someone treated him well, he would treat the other better. Bai Jing's eyes flashed a cold light. The country and the military in the apocalypse could be the most unreliable things. They spent 3 more days in H City. Having already bought everything, looking inside the tiny 300 square meters storage space in the dimension, it had become more substantial, having been enlarged to 400 meters. Bai Jing's heart flashed a touch of joy, and announced that they were to continue to the next stop. Before leaving, he went to gas stations. From each station, he took 10 barrels each of gasoline and diesel. His car's logo was too eye-catching. Gasoline, diesel and materials were different. People brought goods into the warehouse, which was inconspicuous. If it were gasoline and diesel that he bought in advance, driving and running around in the H City, it would inevitably attract people's attention, which is why he kept switching cities to buy materials. He would rather spend more time, money, and effort than rouse the suspicion of others. Then a few days later, since the dimension had electricity, Bai Jing controlled his psychic power to dig the land. He not only dug out 2 acres of land, but also with digging machine, he dug a 200 square meters wide pond. Dug from the top area of the spring down into a 1-meter wide creek, it ran through almost half of the space. From the spring to the feeding of animals, and then to the pond. The current dimension looked like a prototype. To his delight, this space was really odd. When the pond water was filled, the stream was still flowing, but the spring did not run out. As the water did not overflow the pond, he did not know where the spring water flowed to. But since the outbreak, strange things appeared more and more. Bai Jing was only surprised for a moment, then he pleasantly accepted it. He did not want to go after the heart of the matter, either. Otherwise, he would have had a lot of things to understand. He then dug a larger and deeper pond on the other side of the space, covering an area of 400 square meters, which was double the size of the other pond. He tried to put some seawater in it. If the seawater did not go bad, he intended to raise some seafood. As for the 2 acres of land, he planted some of the commonly used herbs, also planted a little bit of precious medicinal herbs. The herbs area was very small. Before the hidden dimension had advanced a rank, he thought this would be it. And 3 acres of land were left. 1 field had planted on it a variety of fruit trees, 1 of vegetables, and the remaining acre was kept for the house. In the excess places, he planted some flowers, or some seasonings, and where there was spare space left, that became a small courtyard. Bai Jing was pleased. Although he only completed less than half of his plan, looking at the sprouts of vegetables exposed inside the fences, the grass gradually growing taller, he felt as if there was beauty before his eyes. The growing stalks were increasingly more interesting. But sometimes, the idea was always more cruel than the reality. A week after leaving H City, this day, Bai Jing had just come out from the gym, having finished a shower and everyday essential things to do. He used his psychic power to explore the space, seeing the grass and vegetables thrive. Even the herb head sprout, he couldn't feel more happy. Deciding to buy a few animals back to raise so that space was also lively, to add a little bit of energy. He first went to the farmer's market and bought 2 roosters and 6 hens. Because he did not have many things, he had the people put the chickens in the car, intending to put them into the dimension, and then went to another store to buy a duck. When the vendor saw the car, his tongue just froze, and then seeing the luxurious furnishings, his stiff hands did not know where to put them. His appearance carrying a chicken was alarmed and helpless. It was such a good car, such a clean and luxurious interior, and when he thought of the chicken staying inside, even if it was not his car, he felt distressed for fear of dirtying it. Bai Jing's eyes darkened. He had not thought things through, as it seemed the ducks could not be bought here. His car was very conspicuous. He was conscious of that. Prior to purchasing the materials, people would consider him as a really rich second generation. But buying chickens, ducks and fish, it attracted too much attention, giving a sense of eccentricity as well as being eye-catching. After the vendor left, Bai Jing drove the car to a remote area and opened the compartment, wanting to send the chickens into the dimension. Huh? No movement. Try again. Still no movement. Bai Jing's face was shocked white. Suddenly remembering, in his previous life, besides himself, it seemed other living beings could never get into the dimension. In his previous life he did not trust humans, not to mention animals, so that he would not get any mutant creatures into the hidden dimension. He was not that crazy. Bai Jing's heart sank. Then, what was to happen to the plan he had previously laid out? If there were no animals, he needed to buy more fresh meat, so the land had to be rearranged. Looking around, Bai Jing did not give the chicken another thought, throwing it directly to the roadside. He stepped on the gas pedal, speeding to leave, only feeling his heart tighten heavily. No, do not panic. There must be something else you had not thought of. Even if he had to buy more fresh meat, that was no big deal. Bai Jing set his mind, looking for a quiet space to think. If the dimension could not keep animals, his plan was useless. He must not panic. Suddenly, Bai Jing's mind moved. His eyes lit up. He was chagrined to remember even he himself could not enter the dimension currently. It was not strange then that animals could not go in, either. It must be like that, Bai Jing kept telling himself, feeling slightly relieved. It seemed he needed to increase his psychic power as soon as possible. He also needed to store more meat, for he needed to be prepared for all contingencies. At least he can harvest food, plant herbs, and lay down a home. There were clean springs that could be drunk from. In fact, compared to his previous life, it was a lot better. He should know contentment, as what belonged to him was his. With such a thought, Bai Jing calmed down. He had lived through all kinds of consequences in his previous life. However, losing some rations would not starve him.